The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and Independent Photo Imagers. Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau.
Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by Elias Jo, the CEO of Entourage Yearbooks, which is one of the leading yearbook providers in the country. He's based in New Jersey, but we're going to talk a little bit about yearbooks, but we're going to talk more about AI and how you can use it in your business. Hi, Elias. How are you today?
Hey, Gary. Great to see you. Great to hear from you.
For the folks who may not have Entourage Yearbooks, can you talk a little bit about how long you've been in the business, where you started, and where you've been going? Because the yearbook segment has gone through some crazy changes over the last few years.
That it has. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about Entourage anytime. We founded Entourage, my brother and I, back in 2006. So this is year 20 of operating the business. We're probably serving somewhere in the magnitude of about 14,000 institutions right now.
Wow.
And the way that I talk about Entourage Yearbooks is there's kind of like regional yearbook printers and book printers. And then there's like the big nationals, which are like the Jostens and the Varsity. And so we've historically played in this middle ground where we're a little more expensive than the regional guys, but we're way cheaper than those big nationals. And then we bring a lot of technology and workflow, and we took a lot of the red tape out of the yearbook process. And so right now we participate in that middle section. And then what we do is we try to expand up and we try to expand down in service model. That's basically where we've been playing for the last 20 years.
So do you work directly with schools or with studios who offer Entourage as a service?
So Entourage has really evolved. So originally when we were founded, we went straight to schools. And the Entourage model is a good, I'd even say a great service model for schools that are kind of smaller and out in the middle of nowhere, and job of kind of finding a lot of schools that they don't want to drive 2 hours to go to. Over the last 10 years, we've been developing our partner channel. So we have two partner models that we work with when we work with high volume photographers. One is where they kind of hand off yearbook production process to us. So we handle the money, we handle the customers, we handle the teachers, we handle the parents. We also have a wholesale model as well, where we license our technology and our print capacity. So we have three different models for going to market now. And that's kind of been the right model for us going forward, where it's like, if you have a school that's pretty far away, our direct model's pretty good. If you've got an area where they want to combine photography and yearbooks together, that's what the partner model has been very effective at.
Sure. So when you talk about a technology layer, you said you kind of add a technology piece to that. What do you mean by that? Do you have your own layout platform, CRM, production platform, APIs? What do you mean by a technology layer?
I think at the core of everything, we've got a software called EDONext, which is our yearbook builder. And it's kind of like a Shutterfly or Canva for building yearbooks. You wouldn't use those. You would use our software just because we have a lot of creatives and we have page flow and a lot of kind of fun ways to actually get the book together. But the designer is actually only a small piece of the technology platform. There's the CRM piece of it. There's the online sales store. We've got a network of about 15 book printing companies across the United States. If you've been doing yearbooks for a while, you know that through COVID and the supply chain issues and everything like that, everything's about redundant supply chains. And so we've got a really nice technology layer to kind of leverage a redundant production platform.
And it's hard to make look easy, right? That's one of the inverse problems kind of in the technology world is you've got an easy to use builder, but there's a lot behind that makes it complex to make that look easy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a software developer by trade. I went to school as an engineer. And before I founded Entourage, I spent 10 years building software for other companies. It's gotten a lot easier with AI. There's no question about it. So I would say this last 18 months, I have never seen the transformation in the building technology like I have in the last 18 months. Historically, the developers, if anybody were good developers, they're squirrely, they're hard to communicate with. It's hard to build great software sometimes unless you speak the language of technology.
Sure. So let's move on into the AI discussion, because that's kind of where we wanted to start. I was at your SPAC session about using AI in your business, and that just kind of sparked our conversation. We got to have you on the podcast because this is really kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? Because AI is the tool that people are using. And in some cases, people are trying to use a hammer that a screwdriver should be used for, kind of thing. It's finding the right tool for the right job. And for the people who weren't at the SPAC session, you did a really nice breakdown of this type of business. You should be looking at these things. Can you kind of just provide an overview of those three areas you were talking about?
I appreciate you attending the session, first of all, Gary, and for noticing that. I've been a member and I've been presenting at SPAC for over a decade. And so at the end of the day, what I've learned over there is people just want practical advice. Like, what can I do, make more money with this thing that you're talking about in this session? Right. But the challenge of SPAC is that you've got guys who've got 5, 10, 20 schools, and you've got people with 200, 300, 400 schools. And so there are different things they need in order to actually utilize what you're talking about. So I think at the most fundamental level, if you're using AI like a glorified Google search, then you're not using it. And that was one of the things I wanted to share, because a lot of people start at that level, which is like, should I use Google or should I use ChatGPT? And once you use it for a while, you really realize that it's not a good search engine. It's fine. But it keeps that context of what you're talking about. So it can remember is this consistent with what you were asking about before, and what are you learning? But I think as I think about, smaller partners, smaller photographers that are using AI, I think the most powerful thing to do in that regard is to just dive right in and start building some software and using it to kind of do things you've never done before as an enabler. And I think that gives you three things. Number one, right, gives you the confidence to know that with AI, there's really nothing you can't do, at least when it comes to technology. Maybe you can't finish a project, but you can get started.
Right.
The second thing that it really does is it really crystallizes your thinking. You're like, how do I want this to work? Where should the buttons be? How does that affect me in my life, right?
Right.
So those are the things that even if you're not a software developer and you've got, you don't have a multi-million-dollar, $10, $20 million studio, right? You can still use it to kind of crystallize your thinking. Now, as you get bigger, these big studios that I talk to, they have their own development teams, or they're working with development shops and all of that. The expectation there is that if they're not giving you 20, 30% more than what they were giving you 2-3 years ago, chances are they're not using the AI correctly, because everything I've seen is pretty much pumping out 20, 30% more. So everything that you used to wait 4 weeks for, you should be waiting 3 weeks for. And everything that used to take 6 months should take about 4 months. So there's the speed that the AI is giving to everybody who's been using it.
That's an interesting point in terms of driving the efficiencies, which is kind of what the volume photography business is about, right? Unlike other forms of photography, portraiture, where the aesthetic may be what people are driving. With the volume business, it's really about driving those efficiencies. If you're a mid-size player, what are some of the first things you would recommend people should be looking at for driving some efficiencies within their things? Like you said, the small guys probably can cope with inefficiencies because they don't have many schools, right? They can just kind of bootstrap it. Big guys have development teams who hopefully are agile enough to figure it out. But for the vast majority are the middle-sized people, and they're kind of stuck between the two. So what would you say to somebody who's like, listen, I'm having really trouble managing this process? Where would you suggest they start?
Well, I think for me, what I have seen is the workflow is a big one, right? Removing glare, taking the glares off the glasses, retouching the faces and everything like that. If you're working with a partner or a software that isn't thinking about this in terms of automation of workflow, then you're probably working with the wrong company. Because just like photographers and yearbook companies are looking at AI to workflows, all those pieces of software that we're paying $20 a month for, $80 a month for, they're all doing it too. Right. And so my big push is to really push those software companies and those SaaS companies, so software as a service companies, to give you more in terms of automation, more connecting to the other apps. So you don't have to connect your CRM to your workflow software, right? That used to be a really complicated thing to do. It shouldn't be complicated anymore. It should be something that these softwares need to start talking to each other in order to get your job done faster and easier. That should be the standard. So I've seen it already in a lot of softwares I use. Like I used to spend hundreds of dollars for like Jira and some other softwares. And now there's no reason to do that, but there's little softwares that connect all these pieces together that kind of make my faster. So I would recommend that is if you don't have a software development team, chances are you're paying $20 a month for somebody who's built some software that you're using, right? And the question is, what am I going to do? What's my expectation for that? And if you've got a partner that's building good AI layer to their software, then you're in the right place. That's me changing from Constant Contact to, and I don't promote Klaviyo, but it's a great example where Constant Contact's a software. I spend $1,000 a month for it. And I'm like, this is crazy. I can go and build this with AI much faster than the $12,000 I'm going to spend this year on it. Now I switched to Klaviyo. I'm still giving them the $1,000 a month, but the automations that come with it now allow me to kind of run better email campaigns and more automations. And so that's an example of kind of what I would expect other people to do who are in the mid-size, who have their own development teams, be like, listen, now is the time to make some changes. Now is the time to do some investigation. And you can use AI to do the investigation too. You don't have to go and figure this out by yourself.
So that's kind of a circular thought process. Use AI to find out how to use AI.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the compounding nature of why this is so exciting. We were talking before, Gary, how this AI evolution feels a lot like the internet evolution that happened back in the 90s and early 90s. So the compounding nature of using AI to use AI to then with AI, right? That's where this thing really starts to compound in ways that even I myself, I'm like, this weekend I was building a piece of software that using ChatGPT to talk to Claude Code, which then built a piece of software that basically does something that I never really thought I needed, but I was just like, AI is going to do it for me anyway. It's effortless. I'll have it with a glass of wine and build software. That was something that I would never think about doing 2 years ago.
So for someone who may not have a development background like yourself, right? You talk about building software, that is almost like changing the oil on my car. Yes, I know I can do it, but I'd rather have someone else do it. But maybe it's more a better idea to do it yourself. And with AI these days, with certain things, give me an example of a very simple process that someone can have. Let's say, for example, how could AI help someone who is maybe getting a list from a school, right? And it's a mess. It's not formatted properly, because that's a lot of stuff. So what could someone do with an AI very simply to help with that, something like that, really a utilitarian type function?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Sure. I think not sponsored by any of these companies, but they're just an as they're earlier. One of the things I shared at SPAC was that I realized how powerful this was. Is I taught my daughter how to use a site called Lovable, which is a site where you can build an app. And she's not a software programmer. She's 12 years old. And she built a beautiful app that's associated with a cooking competition and rating cooking. And you take pictures of your dishes and you put your recipes in. And it's something one of my developers would have taken a month or two to build. She built in 2 hours using Lovable. And I myself right now, am trying to break the mindset of my staff. So I've got all kinds of people in my staff where I go to them and be like, listen, you're going to be a software developer, not because I need you to be a software developer, but I want you to kind of like crystallize your thinking in terms of how you want your processes to work.
Right.
So what I have them do is they go to ChatGPT, and this is what I recommend to a lot of people. It costs $20 a month. And $20 a month for Lovable. So go to ChatGPT and be like, listen, here is something that pains me, right? It takes me a long time. I've got this spreadsheet. The data's a mess, right? I heard from this guy, Elias and Gary, that I should use this thing called Lovable. I have no idea how to do that either. Right. But I've got this spreadsheet. Can you take a look at it? I want to build an app in Lovable to go and clean this up and use it going forward. Right. And then ChatGPT will give you a nice little Lovable prompt. It'll ask you a bunch of questions. You take that, you dump it into Lovable. Right. So this is AI talking to AI. Right. And you're just copy and pasting it. You don't have to do any integration.
Right.
And again, it's $20 a month. Right. You don't have to spend a ton of money to try this out. You dump that in there. Lovable will build an app that goes and cleans up that spreadsheet for you. You'll take a look at it, and it's going to be about 80% there.
Right.
Now, you don't want to get that to 100%. I get it. Right.
Right.
I get it. You don't want to take that to 100%. But that thing that you built in Lovable that's 80% of the way there, you can tweak it, make it better. And then you can hand that off to somebody who knows what they're doing and get that finished. Right. And then it's done. That 80% of the work is what's going to save you 80% of the money in getting these automations done. And so that's why, even for my staff who are not technical, I'm like, listen, I want to teach you this, not because I'm trying to get you to be a software developer, but because it's going to save us all so much money and time, make your life easier.
It's kind of funny. I'm having a flashback. You mentioned earlier, early internet. I remember when in an office, when people first started getting email, right? That's how old I am. Where it used to be paper-based memos and then people switched to email. And again, it was a change. It was like, oh my gosh, you're changing how I'm working. You're telling me that I don't have to sit at a typewriter or a word processor, create a document. I can do it just straight within an email. And then, of course, we had all the disasters of everyone being CC'd on a company-wide email and all the response. No one knew how to use it. And then everyone figured it out. So I think we're kind of in that world again. I mentioned earlier, the early internet. This really feels like the next bubble is going to happen, right? And I don't know what's going to happen, but the real companies are going to happen after the AI bubble bursts, probably.
Yeah. Well, so a couple of things. I don't want to say AI is the answer to the world, just like the internet wasn't the answer to the world. It makes some better, and it's annoying in other ways. Yeah. Email is a great example. Like my email annoys me. I get so many emails, so much garbage, right? And chances are something's going to happen in AI. I wanted to bring this back to what you do, Gary, which is this type of podcast and create awesome content and to share that. And to me, I think AI plays a big role in making that awesome, but it's also a piece of it that makes it kind of dangerous. So I'll give you an example for me. I go and I write a blog post every week now. I never did that before until AI came along. And the reason being is I'm not a bad writer. I'm just a terrible editor. And I'll put stuff into my chat to write an article. I'm like, this article sucks. But if I write the article, ask it to edit it, I'm like, well, that's not kind of it helps the workflow go through. I think that you got to kind of find the pieces that are going to work. Big thing is about AI is it makes everything go to the middle, right? It doesn't write awesome. It doesn't write crappy. It's like in the middle. It's like good enough.
You're exactly right. In fact, a little inside baseball here. The host for my podcast is called Buzzsprout. They have a lot of AI in the back end. It does transcriptions. It does a summary. It does a blog post. Now, like you said, it's 80% there. I never would use that blog post or any of that content without reviewing it and cleaning it up and all those other things. But it saves me the hassle of writing those summaries or transcribing and doing those things. And it's what people expect. And it makes a better product from that. But it's not going to replace me talking to Elias, who is telling me lots of great things.
No, not at all. But the amount of work that you and I now have to do after this podcast is over is probably shrunken quite a bit. And so that's been my experience with it as well.
Yeah, it's really been, it's interesting because, again, you don't know where it's going to end up, right? It's one of those things where we were talking again before we were talking about the idea of an application going to change radically over the next few years because you don't need Photoshop to edit an image anymore. You can just ask an AI to do it for you, and who knows where it's bringing the coding to do that from. And as long as you're getting the results you want, do you even need a Photoshop or a Microsoft Word or an Excel when front end of an AI is going to provide those functions? So when you think of from that standpoint, how can someone kind of prepare themselves now for that world where we're really going to be in an AI first world as opposed to an application first world?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think one, I have a very hopeful view of the impact of AI in our society.
Absolutely.
Big thing I said at SPAC, and I think you were touching on it before too, is if you use the tools and we do the automation and everything like that, we get all this capacity back, right?
Sure.
Because it's going to do the work and we're going to have more time. The question is, what do we do with that extra time? And so my whole point is, if you're using that extra time to make your product better, right? To create new types of products that you can sell, more creative ways for you to interact with your customers, or better channel strategies.
Right.
If you're using that capacity for that, right, you're going to continue to excel and expand. If you use it because you're trying to cut your budgets, or you're trying to fire people, or you're trying to work less hours in the day, right, you're going to get left behind from those guys who are like, listen, this job that used to take me 30 hours a week now only takes me 20. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody at SPAC, actually. It was one of the attendees, and we were talking. He was telling me, because I really don't know much about Claude, right? He goes, "Oh, you got to get into Claude." I was taking notes and writing stuff down, and he was talking about how he was using Claude with his staff, and he's got a team of about 4 or 5 people. And what he said was, he said, "I want them to automate as much as possible so they can spend more time talking to customers." Because he says that's our business, is building human relationships with people. And if they're spending time in spreadsheets and editing docs and creating presentations and doing these things, that's time they could be talking to customers.
Yeah, I love what he's saying. And it's a similar mantra that we have as well. I've got an account management team who talks to schools all day, and they say no a lot to the schools. They're like, "Oh, that's too hard," or "That's not part of the policy." And now they have all these tools to help them go faster. And so they have more confidence to be, "No problem. Oh, do you want this different? No problem. We'll take care of it." So I think that type of evolution is just going to make the industry better. And hopefully it means people spend more money.
Well, again, it is a lot of perspective, right? Do you have a blue skies approach where things can grow and things can expand? Is the yearbook dead? I've heard a lot of people say that actually the yearbook is actually the next frontier, actually, for growth, because enrollments aren't increasing. People aren't building more schools. So what is an opportunity for growth for the volume industry? It's yearbooks, because there's so much untapped potential within a yearbook of what a yearbook could be. And people have been dorking around with embedded video and all kind of stuff on that. And I have my own views on that. I don't think that's the future. I think it's a feature, but it's not the future. But I think there's personalization, there's user-generated content, there's generative content that could be in there. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, so my perspective on the yearbook industry, it's healthy and strong. Honestly, it's shrinking at the high school market. So that $120 yearbook, right? That product is shrinking. There's no question about that. And nobody would debate that. But am I making more preschool yearbooks than I've ever made before in my entire life? Yeah, absolutely. Am I making yearbooks for daycare centers now? Sports team? So the reality is self-publishing, book publishing is a growing industry. It is growing faster than GDP globally. Right. This thing we call a yearbook might change a little bit in terms of what it means. People doing family yearbooks now, get together yearbooks. I think that's really where the opportunity is, at least for people who are adding a printed bound product to their portfolio. It's lots of photos. You can sell that pretty easily for $30, $40. The question is, do you have the workflow to do that in a way that doesn't make you crazy? What it comes down to.
And it's really all about reducing barriers, right? Using some of these tools. It used to be autofill, and now it's AI to help people tell the story. Because like you said, if we can get consumers 80% there or 90% there, and then let them tweak it, either a yearbook, a family memory book, an album or whatever, the buy rate's going to explode. I mean, that's just the reality. Is looking at a blank sheet or a blank layout for a yearbook or a family vacation book, it's the worst thing ever. Just seeing a blank page and not knowing what to do with it. Most people don't have the experience to do it.
Yeah, I think that yearbooks are going, I think the printed book is going to continue to be there. So I'm not too worried about the printed book. I'm in the business of giving software away for free and charging for the book, right? That's what I'm in the business of, right? I don't charge for the software and then give the book away for free, though I've played with that model before in my mind. But the question is just that process of making the book. So are you going to be able to use your voice and video to make a book? Yeah, absolutely. Are you going to be able to prompt a book into existence by being like, here's a bunch of pictures that we took. Can you go and make the basketball section for me? And to do that through a prompt rather than dragging the photos onto a template one at a time. But that's clearly the future of where this is going. What that means is people are going to make more pages and more books. your point, Gary, maybe they're more personalized. Maybe your book's a little different from my book. There is a question of that. But the process is going to get easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of easy, where can people go for more information about Entourage Yearbooks and learning more about what you guys do?
Well, thanks for asking that. Anybody can come to entourageyearbooks.com. That's Entourage. You can find me if you're interested on LinkedIn. You can just find me, Elias. I think it says something about being an executive there or something, but that's how you can find me on there. I don't think there's too many down there. And yeah, that's basically
great. Well, this has been a great discussion. Like I said, one of the great things about interacting with people in person at a place like SPAC is you start these conversations, then we can have you on the podcast. And this has just been a fun time. It's been great having you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Gary. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.